Have you achieved success and a high income, but still lack personal fulfillment and work-life balance? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful But Struggling podcast. Join us as Erin, Eunicia, Joanne, and Mim share transformative insights and practical strategies just for you. Discover real stories and lessons that will elevate your personal satisfaction, professional accomplishment, and financial empowerment.
During our last episodes, we have been talking in detail about mental and emotional well-being and the specific struggles that physicians go through and different things that we can do about it. And if you haven't listened to those episodes, go back because we have a lot of gems there for all of you. So we were thinking about what else can we talk that's related. And we mentioned so many life events, big and small. And we said, we need to talk about transitions. So today I am here with my super co-host, Dr. Erin Hurley. And together we will be talking about transitions. So start paying attention to what comes to mind when you hear the word transition and how you define it. And that is actually my first question to you, Erin. What comes to mind when you think about transitions for yourself and the way that you help other physicians in your coaching practice?
Transitions can be big and small. The first place I want to start talking about is our daily transitions. As we transition from I was sleeping and now I'm awake. I'm at home helping get my family ready for the day, and now I'm transitioning to work. And then maybe I'm thinking about patient care. And then after that, maybe it's a time for a break at lunch, more patient care, going from one patient to another. All of those things are transitions. And even during that time, let's say it's lunchtime. And unfortunately, if you're like many physicians, you're kind of chained to your computer over lunch, not wanting to step away because you've got so many things to do. So you may be then transitioning from I'm looking at my inbox and I'm doing my admin work and I'm doing my patient notes and I'm trying to get a bite of food and I need to go, check in with my staff and I need to follow up on those orders. Each one of those little things that I brought up is a transition. And I talk about it in one of the courses I teach about the toggle. When we're toggling back and forth, rapid fire as a pediatrician, we had such a fast pace of toggling. And it really is emotionally, physically, and mentally draining if we're not paying attention to how we manage those transitions. If you think about hundreds, maybe even thousands of transitions during one day.
My brain is spinning because we think about it in terms of big events. And then you might be thinking, oh, well, that, transitions. I'm not going through any transition. And how cool that your first example is you're asleep and you're awake. We go through transitions all day long. And a lot of times when I'm talking with physicians, I hear a lot I don't have time for that mindfulness that you talk about, or, that sounds like too much work. And I always say, do you transition from one patient room to the other? And that is space to do deep breathing. And that doesn't add time. So you can even use the transitions to clear the energy and reset for the next patient. And like you said, there are, I hear you talk a lot, Erin, in terms of your coaching of being super efficient and not just efficiency doesn't mean more work, but done more effectively so that you can actually end up having the time and the energy for the other important things. So those were I went on a little tangent there of some of the things that came to mind just listening to you in terms of the day to day. But what about the big things? What are some examples of big transitions that a lot of us go through, and what have you seen?
Well, Joanne and I have spent a lot of time together. We were at an in-person event last week. We've talked a lot about transitions, about having kids going off to college. In my case, my child moving literally across the country. and another child, getting stationed across the country, another one graduating high school. My husband is changed jobs, and I don't know how many rooms, maybe half of the rooms in my house are changing roles. All of those are big transitions. Joanne, you've got big transitions. I think people might be changing jobs. You might be changing into or out of a leadership role. Each of those places in your life can really take a lot of time, energy, fatigue, kind of be a big drain on you if you don't go about it with intention. And even I think being aware. Oh, as Joanne and I were talking about, shifting things around in our homes, getting rid of some clutter, changing the way rooms are set up. And it's like, okay, it takes me a little extra time every time we're recording because we're also on video. And so it's like, I have some clutter in the space that I'm recording in. This room is in transition. I just moved my office home again after being moved out for over a year. I've got stuff to take care of. That's all transition. And for me, it's being aware of, oh, of course it's like this. Of course it takes a little bit of extra effort because you've had one transition after another. And just acknowledge that and say, oh, that totally makes sense. Joanne, I know you not only have experienced your own transitions and you also help other physicians with your coaching practice deal with transitions. What are your thoughts, especially on those big transitions that we come across? Seems like far too often in our lives.
I'm thinking right now of some of the women physicians I'm working with, and a lot of them are going through transitions. One of them is thinking about starting her own obesity medicine practice as a family physician, and acknowledging the fear and the courage that it's needed because we're so used to doing things one way, and that by itself is a good acknowledgement of our brain gets used to doing things one way, and when we think about transitions, it can get difficult. And I always say it's good things are also difficult. If you were given a new position that you really wanted and now you are in a leadership position, that's huge. That's a big transition. So we don't need to think of transitions as something like traumatic or negative. Quite the opposite. A lot of times it's really good. There could be a career shift. It could be you making your decision to have more balance in your life. And one of my other coaching clients right now, she is deciding, actually, let me rephrase that. She decided, because she sent the letter, to step down from a leadership position because she is focusing on her work-life integration, finding more of that balance and harmony because she wants to be with her kid more. Other transitions could be that you are going part-time, retiring, you are moving. Or like you said, you have a kid going off to college. You can tell that Erin and I have gone through that recently because we keep on connecting with that. Or you might have taken a break and you're going back, or you just had a hard time with stress, overwhelm, or burnout, and you decided to do something about it. And that's a transition. So you can see how it can have so many flavors. And what you said, Erin, that I heard you in terms of the knowing that it's the day to day, and then also how it translates into the bigger moves in life that can create so many emotions.
Well, and one thing we didn't talk about is as physicians and healthcare providers, we're used to providing patient care. And for some of us, our journey gets flipped and we might become the patient. And as I think about my own journey and being a breast cancer survivor and becoming a patient, that was a big transition. And recognizing whether it's us going through that transition, becoming the patient instead of the provider, or maybe it's a family member, maybe it's our partner, our spouse, our child, and recognizing that feels uncomfortable being in that new role, whatever that is. And as Joanne and I were sharing before the recording, with transition, if we can bring more intention, kind of how we do small things, we do big things. What if we brought more intention to our little transitions of the day? One of my coaches and mentors talks about letting go of what just happened. Maybe I got into a little issue with one of my children as I was getting ready for work in the morning, and then I left. Am I going to allow that, if I don't properly transition, to then impact negatively my day at the office, interacting with patients or clients or leaders? Am I going to let that overshadow my day? Or what if I could learn to release whatever tension, whatever emotions were related to that, have a built-in trigger or automatic that, okay, now I'm transitioning from home to work. And now let me set my intention for my next activity. As Joanne said, as we go from patient to patient, it could be hand washing. For someone in private or in primary care, I remember washing my hands sometimes 50 times a day. What if I allowed that as I was getting started with my new patient or finishing up my patient, and every time I washed my hands at the beginning and end of that encounter? What if that was my trigger to say, what am I going to let go of from this encounter? And now can I set my intention to my next? Are there little things that can train you? And so when it comes to life's bigger transitions, then we might be better. How can I transition from seeing my child most days in my house to now spending most of my time on FaceTime? And that's not even every day. How can I bring intention to that? How can I create that so I get the most out of it as my new norm, instead of pining away and saying, oh, it's not the same, and not letting go of what the past reality was, so that I can be fully present in my new reality, even if it's very different.
Erin, you mentioned some things already, but what are some specific tools that you believe can be helpful for both big and small transitions?
One is those triggers, having an automatic, every time I sit down at my office chair, every time I get into my car to drive to work. One coworker that I worked with, we had an outdoor garden at my office, and there was this trellis. And every time she would walk underneath the trellis, not under the trellis, archway, you'd have to walk through a trellis. There's this archway that was covered in beautiful plants. And every time she would leave the clinic, she just pictured all of the day's stressors falling away as she then transitioned to her car to now drive to her family, instead of letting the stress of the day carry through with her into her evening. So practicing that, putting what we talk about all the time, putting the reps in. If you're not used to doing healthy transitions or intentional transitions, start practicing. Have a visual cue. Have something go off on your phone or your smartwatch to remind you, how will I make my transitions better? Because when we can learn to do our transitions better, it can actually save a lot of emotional drain, energy drain. And when we bring that intention, then what if we could have the great energy we want at the end of our day, just like we started our day? I know for me, that was a big factor for much of my medical career, is not having the energy at the end of the day. And my coach would constantly be on my tail, asking me, how are you managing your transitions? So those triggers is one, practicing. And then, as we spoke about in our last episode, is having self-compassion and grace. If this is new to you, you haven't been used to bringing intention to your transitions, give yourself some grace, give yourself a pep talk. Maybe put it in your to-do list and start small. So as I've learned a ton about habit accumulation, getting new habits in place, when we, as overachiever, perfectionistic physicians, if you can relate to that, I know I can, when we overdo it with what we want to implement with our new habits, we oftentimes then get overwhelmed and we just kind of put our hands up and say, it's not possible. What if instead you chose 1 or 2 transitions of your day to practice? and then maybe you'll remember to do it once. So what are the things you can put into place to make it easy and lower that bar? And then as you successfully do those transitions, pay attention. Oh, how did that feel now that I'm doing it differently? And then use that momentum from your success, from your little win, to pay attention to it. And then use that as your motivation and kind of building up that momentum in order to then take on more and more healthy transitions. And not only then using those for your little transitions for your day, but asking yourself, how can I do a better transition for whatever those life things are coming at you that either are known or sometimes they're unknown? Let's be better prepared.
What a good question to ask yourself. How are you managing your transitions? Because like you said, the way we go through it on our day-to-day basis is the way that we'll handle big transitions. And I like to think of kind of the best practices for big transitions is also connecting with your values of why is this transition happening? Are you moving? Is it a big decision? Is it for someone else? And connecting with it, because just that will help you get through the difficult times. Also, be open to change. I heard you say that in different examples, and the flexibility that we need, that we're not always great at. And think of times when you've been through a transition before. We all have. What made you successful? What was that formula that you created for yourself? We can hear tools from other people going through transitions, but you have your own. Think about what worked, what didn't work, what can be better, and then focus on that self-care and seek guidance if needed. Those were some of the things that I also heard you say throughout the examples, Erin, that we can make it into points here as best practices.
Love that. And one of the things I didn't really specify is there are transitions in our lives that we choose, as you brought up. Maybe it's switching jobs. Maybe it's moving homes. Maybe it's stepping into a leadership position or letting go of a leadership position. Sometimes the transitions are our choice. And when we remind ourselves, I chose to step into this position. I chose, for us, my husband chose to make a pivot in his career, retire from one type of firefighting into another. And now we're in a learning curve. We chose this. So I don't want to get frustrated and go, oh, why is this so complicated right now? Because I don't know what to expect because it's new. Oh, yeah, because we chose to see if this was going to get us the outcomes based on our family values. The other type of transitions, though, that can happen is those ones that we're not expecting. And that may be get let go from a job. That may be having a health condition or an injury that you weren't expecting. And yet, even when you aren't expecting those transitions, you can choose to be empowered by maneuvering through that transition intentionally by asking, not just saying, I didn't ask for this. Why me? Why my family? But instead saying, of the things I do have control over, what are my options? And using that intention to better bridge where you were before to where you're at now, even if it wasn't your choice.
So many pearls here talking about transitions. It's a topic that we go to frequently. And I heard you say of the importance of the day to day, including waking up, transitions, and then the big things that are sometimes our choice and sometimes not our choice. And we can still choose to make it the best for us, even while allowing the emotions. Let's not forget about that. I feel it when I hear you talk about bring the intention, have the awareness, because it can mean the world when we have that presence. We bring that energy, and it's something that can definitely make it better. And of course, when we're thinking of what to do, we talk about getting in the reps, like we're going to the gym. Practice. and practice when you're feeling better so that then you have those tools readily available to you when it's more difficult. And then again, connecting with the values, the intention, the why, checking in with ourselves, what helped before. And of course, we always say, if you're struggling, there's help. Talk to a friend, talk to someone who went through a similar transition, or seek out coaching. So many things that can help in these situations. And Erin, tell us, what are some words of wisdom related to transition?
Make it personal to you. When you're thinking about this transition, it's okay to learn from others, but asking yourself, why is this transition important to me? How is it going to affect me and my family, especially for bigger transitions? And then what are your values that you're bringing to make an intentional choice in moving through that transition, and not expecting that you're going to make the same choices as others. Maybe your choice is going to look completely different than everyone you know. And that's okay. Trust that you know yourself well enough if you've paused to take the time and ask yourself, how am I best going to get through this transition with my values, my support team? And then also, as we talk about support team, I've been talking a lot about this in recent episodes. Don't forget that you can ask for help to go through transitions. You do not need to go through them alone.
Just that, I want to listen to the episode, rewind that part, and listen to you with my eyes closed and my hands to my heart, because it's so powerful. And if you enjoyed this episode, if you found it valuable, we would love for you to share it, rate, and review. We want to get more of this information to you, so stay tuned for our next episode.
Don't miss out on more strategies that will elevate you to new heights. Visit successfulbutstruggling.com now, where you'll discover exclusive resources and the opportunity to connect with each of us individually. There you can dive deeper into how you, too, can take your personal and professional game to the next level. And if you're serious about optimizing your results, take 2 quick steps now. Number 1, connect with us on the website. And number 2, tune in to the next episode.